Imagine you are standing on the surface of the moon, looking at the Earth and the sky. You feel a sense of awe and wonder, knowing that you are one of the few humans who have ever set foot on another world. You are also proud of your country, which has achieved this remarkable feat of exploration and science. Now imagine that none of this is real. You are actually in a studio, wearing a fake spacesuit and helmet, surrounded by props and cameras. That your country has staged the whole thing to fool the world and win the space race. This is the shocking claim that some people make about the Apollo 11 mission, which supposedly landed the first humans on the moon on July 20, 1969. According to them, the whole thing was staged by the US government, with the help of Hollywood and other accomplices. They argue that the photos, videos, and testimonies of the astronauts and other witnesses are fake, inconsistent, or manipulated. They contend that the physics and technology of the time were not advanced enough to allow such a complex and dangerous operation. But how credible are these claims? And why do they persist despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary? In this documentary, we will examine some of the most common arguments and counter-arguments about the moon landing hoax theory, and try to separate fact from fiction. Landing on the moon is not easy. It requires precise calculations, advanced technology, careful planning, and a lot of luck. Even with modern capabilities, countries face challenges and failures in their attempts to reach the lunar surface. For example, in 2019, India's Chandrayaan-2 mission failed to land near the south pole of the moon, a region that had never been explored before. This was India's second mission to the moon, after Chandrayaan-1 in 2008, which discovered traces of water molecules on the lunar surface. Chandrayaan-2 consisted of an orbiter, a lander named Vikram, and a rover named Pragyan. The mission was launched on July 22, 2019, from the Satish Dhawan Space Center in Andhra Pradesh. The orbiter successfully entered lunar orbit on August 20, 2019, and began to map and study the moon's topography, mineralogy, elements, exosphere, and water ice. However, on September 6, 2019, Vikram lost contact with ground control during its final descent and crashed on the surface. The rover was not deployed and remained inside the lander. The orbiter continued to operate and transmit data until March 2020. India did not give up on its lunar ambitions. It launched Chandrayaan-3 on July 14, 2023, from the same launch site as Chandrayaan-2. This time, it only included a lander and a rover, as the orbiter from Chandrayaan-2 was still functioning. On August 23, 2023, Chandrayaan-3 successfully landed near the south pole of the moon. It took 41 days to reach the lunar surface. After this, India became the first country to land on the moon's south pole. India is not alone in its quest for lunar exploration. Other countries, such as China, Japan, Russia, and Israel, have also sent probes, orbiters, landers, and rovers to study the moon in recent years. Some of them have achieved remarkable results, such as finding water ice or organic molecules on the lunar surface. Some of them have faced difficulties or disasters, such as losing contact or crashing on impact. But none of them have matched what NASA claims to have done more than 50 years ago, landing humans on the moon and bringing them back safely to Earth. Between 1969 and 1972, NASA says that it sent 6 manned missions to the moon as part of its Apollo program. 12 astronauts walked on the lunar surface, spending a total of more than 100 hours there. They collected rocks and soil samples, planted flags and experiments, drove rovers and golf balls, and left behind footprints and memories. The first and most famous of these missions was Apollo 11, which made history on July 20, 1969, when Neil Armstrong became the first human to step onto another world. He was followed by Buzz Aldrin, while Michael Collins remained in orbit around the moon. The 3 men returned to Earth on July 24, after spending more than 8 days in space. Their achievement was celebrated by millions of people around the world, who watched their live broadcast or heard their radio transmission. They were hailed as heroes and pioneers by their countrymen and leaders. They were awarded medals and honors by various institutions and organizations. They inspired generations of scientists and explorers to follow in their footsteps. But not everyone was convinced by their story. Some people doubted their authenticity or veracity.
You examine pictures offered by NASA as genuine, you find that in many cases the shadows are not parallel. Well, since the sun was the only source of light, all shadows on the moon should be exactly parallel, but they aren't.
Some people accused them of lying or deceiving.
There's only one sun. There are not two. But these shadows are anomalous in that sometimes they are diverging from objects and sometimes converging. And it can't be. You can go any place on this planet when the sun's up and you look at two objects and those sun shadows are parallel.
Some people claim that they never went to the moon at all. The moon landing hoax theory has been around since the early days of the Apollo program. It gained popularity in the 1970s when some books and documentaries questioned the authenticity of NASA's claims. Some of the most influential works were We Never Went to the Moon. They have argued that the physics and technology of the time were not sufficient or reliable enough to allow such a mission. They have questioned the motives and incentives of the US government and NASA. They have suggested that the witnesses and participants of the mission were either deceived or coerced into lying or keeping silent. For example, one of their arguments is that there are no stars visible in the sky in the photos and videos of the moon. They claim that this is because the whole thing was filmed in a studio, where the background was blacked out or painted. Another argument is that the shadows are not parallel or have different lengths in some images. They assert that this is because there were multiple light sources or spotlights used to illuminate the scene. A third argument is that the flag is waving or fluttering in some frames. They allege that this is because there was wind or air in the studio, which is impossible on the moon, where there is no atmosphere. The defenders of the moon landings have responded to these arguments with their evidence and explanations. They have shown that the photos and videos from the moon are consistent and authentic. They have explained that there are no stars visible in the sky because of the exposure settings of the cameras, which were adjusted for the bright lunar surface. They have explained that the shadows are not parallel or have different lengths because of the uneven terrain, the wide-angle lenses, and the multiple light sources, the sun, the Earth, and the spacecraft. They have explained that the flag is waving or fluttering because of the inertia from being planted or moved by the astronauts, not because of any wind or air. These are just some of the many points that both sides have raised over the years. They have debated over various aspects of the mission, such as the rockets, the lunar module, the spacesuits, the communication systems, the political context, the media coverage, and the scientific analysis. They have challenged each other to provide conclusive proof or alternative explanations for their claims. So who is right? Did humans land on the moon in 1969? Or was it all a hoax? The answer is not easy to find. Both sides have their arguments and evidence, and both sides have their own flaws and biases. It is hard to be objective and impartial when dealing with such a controversial and complex topic. It is easy to be influenced by our own beliefs and preferences and to dismiss or ignore the evidence that contradicts them. However, we can try to be more rational and critical in our evaluation of the arguments and evidence. We can try to apply some basic principles of logic, science, and history to test the validity and reliability of the claims. Of course, we may not be able to find a definitive answer. We may not be able to prove or disprove either side beyond any doubt. But we can at least try to appreciate the wonder and beauty of the moon, whether we believe that humans have landed on it or not. After all, it is our nearest neighbor in space, and it has inspired us for centuries with its phases, eclipses, tides, and myths. So what do you think? Did humans land on the moon in 1969? Or was it all a hoax? The choice is yours. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below and watch these videos as well. See you guys in the next one.